name is Emma, and today I'm going to be giving you guys kind of like a wrap up of all of the books that I read for my reading challenge for 2015. So there has been like nearly 10,000 people since I originally announced this TBR challenge. So hey, what's up? Hello guys, my name's Emma. I like to read books. So the premise of this TBR challenge, 2015 reading challenge, whatever you want to call it, was just to give me like a bunch of new books to read. I know a lot of people did challenges where it was like really pushing their boundaries as a reader. I didn't want to do that. For 2015, I wanted to read books that I still wanted to read. I just wanted to pick up books in a different order. For example, I buy a lot of books and I don't read them for a long period of time. I forget about them. I just don't want to read them. So the point of this TBR challenge was for me to pick out one challenge for each month and complete it. Not necessarily something that like made me go crazy, something that I like felt like I had to read. It was books that I already wanted to read, just picking them up at different points in the year. Does that make sense? Am I explaining this correctly? So for each month, I completed one challenge, and I actually completed all 12 challenges for this year, which doesn't seem like a lot because I read like 92 books or something this year. But I think I did really well completing all of them because a lot of months it was kind of tough to pick up that last book that I felt that I needed to complete. But I just wanted to make a video talking about all of the challenges that I completed and what books I chose for them and how I felt about these books. The whole thing you do when you talk about book wrap-ups, right? January's challenge was to read a book that is not my normal YA fiction novel. So under that category was like an adult novel, a nonfiction, a children's book, and what I chose was a graphic novel. So I picked up Through the Woods by Emily Carroll in like December, January of last year. This book was going around BookTube and a lot of people were loving it. First of all, I'm not a big graphic novel fan, and second of all, I don't read a lot of horror, and this is both of them in one book. I actually ended up finishing this book in like 15 minutes because I read graphic novels really quickly even though I don't love them all that much. But I really enjoyed it. There's like some beautiful artwork in this book. It's all super creepy and like interesting, and the stories themselves were really entertaining. I really enjoyed reading Through the Woods, and I hope that in the future I can find graphic novels that are similar to the kind of format, art style, story style, just something similar to Through the Woods, because maybe I'll end up picking up more graphic novels because of it. February's challenge for 2015 was to start a series that I had been avoiding, and I specifically wrote on a piece of paper, yes, Emma, that means Game of Thrones or The Lord of the Rings. And I was not ready to read Game of Thrones. I'm still not ready to read Game of Thrones. I don't know if I will ever actually be ready to read Game of Thrones. So I only left one other option, which was The Lord of the Rings. So I read The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. I had this book and I read it in a physical format, but once I had finished it, I have no idea where it went. Now, I love The Hobbit. I read The Hobbit like 2 years ago. It's still one of my favorite fantasy novels to this day. I gave The Fellowship of the Ring 5 out of 5 stars because I absolutely loved it. Well, it did take a lot more out of me to read because I need to focus way more than I do when I read like a regular YA urban fantasy novel. The story was super interesting and I was captivated the entire time. Even though it's been almost a year, I feel like I still need a break before picking up the next book in the trilogy, but I really, really loved the first book in The Lord of the Rings and I definitely want to finish it eventually. My challenge for March was to read the last book that I have bought. Now, if you've been on my channel since like February, March, you know that this is the time period when I was reading 50 Shades of Grey. And so I read 50 Shades of Grey, I saw the movie at the end of February, and then I decided that I wanted to pick up the rest of the trilogy. So the book that I had read for the book that I had recently bought at the time of picking that challenge was 50 Shades Darker by E.L. James. I love the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy. Nothing in the world is going to change my mind. This story is just super entertaining, and that's all it really needs to be. I don't need great quality literature to enjoy it. It can just be fun. And 50 Shades of Grey is fun. 50 Shades Darker is definitely my favorite in the entire series. The atmosphere of this book is totally different from the first book and also the last book, because the last book is super serious and the first book is like super hard and also serious. While there are also very dark moments in 50 Shades Darker, haha, dark and darker, there's a lot of fun, lighthearted moments, and there's some super romantic scenes between Christian and Anna that I absolutely loved. But I love 50 Shades Darker, and of course I give it 5 out of 5 stars. The challenge I had picked for April was to read a hyped up book, and the book I chose for that was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I'm sure you've heard of Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I think April, March-ish is when Red Queen came out, so it was still like freshly new hype, and it's all I was hearing about. So naturally, as a fantasy lover, I picked up the most hyped up fantasy book of 2015. I have to say I didn't love it. I think I gave it either 3, 3.5, or 4 stars. It wasn't terrible, it was enjoyable. I'm definitely continuing on with the series. I just wasn't as captivated as I am normally when I read a fantasy book, and I think that's what kind of put me off of it. But I do really understand the hype around it. I understand why so many people love it. I just didn't love it as much as them. But I am really excited for Glass Sword, and I can only hope that the sequel will help me love this series even more. Then we get to May's challenge, was to read a book from the library. And I know that doesn't sound like a challenge whatsoever, but it's a big challenge for me. The whole premise around this challenge is that I buy books like right off the shelf. Sometimes I like just skim the synopsis and I buy them. I used to read books from the library and then I'd buy the box set of the series or the book afterwards. I don't do that anymore. I haven't done that in like 2 years besides this book that I'm about to show you. So books I get from the library have always been reserved for books that I'm kind of iffy about and like I don't really know how I'm going to feel about them. So the book I picked for May was Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. And boy was I wrong about me being iffy about this series. Oh my god, guys, Vampire Academy. I have a full spoiler-free review on the entire series of Vampire Academy if you're interested. The link will be below. I was also really excited to pick up Vampire Academy because Rochelle Mead was going to be at BookCon, which was in May, and I met Rochelle Mead and she's on Vampire Academy. But I had like the best time of my life reading the Vampire Academy series. In May, I had only read Vampire Academy, but in June or July, I had just bombarded myself with the rest of the series. I think I read like the other 5 books in like 2 weeks. I was a mess. I have no idea when I would have picked up Vampire Academy had I not picked it up for this challenge, and it has become one of my absolute all-time favorite series, so I'm really thankful for my TBR challenge, if not just for this book. June's challenge was to reread a favorite series of mine. Now, in June, I hadn't had the time to read an entire series, which I really wanted to do, but I technically completed this one. Starting in March, I believe it was, I was a part of a read-along called the Mortal Read-Along, where we reread the Mortal Instruments series. We read 1 book per month, and June's book was City of Fallen Angels, so I counted that as part of my TBR challenge for that month. So while I couldn't read the entire Mortal Instruments series, I did read City of Fallen Angels, and I have to say I enjoyed City of Fallen Angels more than I ever have before, more than the other 6 times that I've read this book. I absolutely loved it this time around. I've always considered City of Fallen Angels to be like a filler book in between City of Glass and City of Lost Souls, because like not much happens and it's not the most exciting book. Like I'm pretty sure it's the shortest book in the series, but after reading it, it's definitely moved up on my favorites list of the Mortal Instruments, and I really understand why it was more a filler book and why the ending was so exciting while the beginning was kind of like meh-ish. After rereading this book, I absolutely love City of Fallen Angels, and I'm so happy I reread it this year. Clearly 5 out of 5 stars. Is there even a question there? July's challenge was to read a book from an author that I have never read before, and the book I chose from July was The Wrath in the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. I actually got a copy of this from Penguin Random House, so thank you so much, Penguin, for sending me this book, because I never would have picked it up otherwise had you not sent it to me, and I freaking loved it. I had never heard of Renee Ahdieh before. I don't know if this is her debut novel, but if this is a debut novel, oh my fucking god, teach me how to write a book. It was so amazing. It just completely blew my mind. I was never expecting to love The Wrath in the Dawn as much as I actually did. It definitely became one of my absolute favorite books of 2015 just because it was so unique and individual and I had never read anything like it. Although I had never heard of Renee Ahdieh beforehand, I am totally anticipating the rest of her books. Definitely the rest in this series, but I will totally be following her once the Wrath in the Dawn series has finished because this book was freaking phenomenal. My challenge for September was to read a book that was a random bookshop find. So not something that I had found on BookTube, not something that I was scrolling through on Amazon, a book where I went to Barnes & Noble and I saw it and I had to have it. So the book that I chose for that is Survive the Night by Danielle Vega. What really attracted me to this book was a synopsis. I mean, especially the cover, because this cover is super freaking cool. But I love electronic music. I've been going to raves and different electronic events since I was 16 years old, and one of the first sentences in the synopsis mentions a rave, so I'm like, okay, I'm sold. I wasn't terribly disappointed. I really enjoyed the book. I shouldn't say that I was disappointed. It wasn't as horror-y as I would expect from an actual horror novel. I think I would label this book as more of like a suspense thriller instead of horror, so I'm not like disappointed with it by any means. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, or 4.5 out of 5 stars. I do have a spoiler-free review on Survive the Night if you're interested in hearing more about it, and I will link that video below with all the other videos that I've been talking about in this video. It was another book that was just a really entertaining read. It was nothing phenomenal, it didn't blow my mind, but I had a lot of fun reading it, and I'm really glad this challenge pushed me to pick up this new book. October's challenge was to read a book that has been on my shelf for over a year, and I think I picked a very fitting book for the month of October, which was The Culted Girl in Coal Town by Holly Black. I had a lot of trouble picking a book for this challenge at first because while there are so many books on my shelf that I bought a year ago, I had a specific one in mind when I originally wrote this challenge, and in October, I wasn't all about reading that book at the time. Like, I still had to put it off. So it was like, what other book do I want to read? And so in October, I actually went to a Cassandra Clare and Holly Black signing, and I was like, oh, I have a Holly Black book that I haven't read yet. Let's read it. Like 5 billion years ago during Booktubeathon 2014, I had won the cosplay challenge, and Kat was the host for the cosplay challenge, and she was giving away a copy of The Cold Girl in Cold Town, so I ended up winning a copy, and I just never picked it up until this October. I loved The Cold Girl in Cold Town. Oh my god, this book was so good. I give it another 5 out of 5 stars, as clearly I've liked a lot of the books that I've read so far on this Tbr challenge. I just love urban fantasy so much, and this is how you write an urban fantasy book. I also haven't read like a really good vampire book in a while, and this was a really good vampire book. I don't know what else to say about The Cold Girl in Cold Town other than I loved it so much. I think I got myself confused with the months. I think I read Survive the Night in August, and then I read The Cold Girl in Cold Town in September, and then I read Binge by Tyler Oakley in October. Is that correct? I don't know. I messed up. Whatever these months are, that month that I had to read Binge for was to read a nonfiction book. And at first I'm like, fuck. What am I going to read for a nonfiction book? I only read young adult fiction. Then I had realized that Tyler Oakley's book was coming out in October, and I decided that I wanted to read it straight away because I love Tyler Oakley so much. This is another book that I have a review on, so check the link below if you're interested in seeing that review. Tyler Oakley saw it and he really enjoyed it, which is like the best feeling in the entire freaking world. I generally don't read a lot of memoirs just because a lot of people that I would read memoirs about haven't written memoirs. But I loved Binge so much. Again, it's one of my absolute favorite books of the entire year. Tyler, oh my god, this book just taught me so much about myself, and I can't put it into coherent words like I did in that review, but oh my god, this book meant so much to me. I'm so happy that I read it, and I'm so happy that Tyler wrote it. 5 freaking stars out of 5 stars, and if I could give it 10 out of 10 stars, or 10 out of 5 stars is what I was trying to say. If I could give it that rating, that's the rating it would get. Now I know we're on the right track with the month because November's challenge was to read a book that I found from Booktube. It's funny because actually while I was filming my November wrap-up, I was talking about this Tbr challenge. I was like, I guess I didn't complete it for November. But in the midst of filming, I was like, well, I guess you could count Winter by Marissa Meyer because I found the Lunar Chronicles from Booktube. So that's the book I chose as completing this Tbr challenge. I had started the Lunar Chronicles in like September of 2014, I believe, but I know it was one of the very first sci-fi books that I had ever read, and it hooked me so much, and now I absolutely love the genre. There's just something so magical about this series, and if you haven't read it yet, what the fuck are you doing? Go read the Lunar Chronicles because they're so freaking good! But yeah, I didn't even realize that I had actually completed a challenge for November until I looked at Winter and I was like, you beautiful being, I got you from Booktube, so I'm gonna count you as my challenge for November. And I loved Winter so much. Another book that I have reviewed, Book Talks all around. If you're interested in watching my Winter review, there are spoilers. You can check the description below. Winter is my baby, and again, it's one of my favorite books of the entire year, and I loved it so much. So even though I didn't pick it up because of the challenge, I'm glad I could apply it to this challenge because this challenge was great this year, and this book was great. And then we get down to the final challenge of my 2015 reading challenge, which was to read a book that was over 500 pages. This one's an easy one for me, but I decided to go with The Diviners by Libba Bray. I read The Diviners as a part of the Biblio Book Club's Book of the 3 months? What? It's not a month-long book club. We read a book every 3 months, and the book that we were reading for the end of 2015 was The Diviners. I love The Diviners too. I think I gave it 4 or 4.5 out of 5 stars. I did have a lot of problems with it, specifically with like the perspectives. That was probably my biggest problem with the book, but I really loved The Diviners. It was such a great story. It kept me interested the entire time. There was just so much action, and I haven't read Lair of Dreams yet because I only just recently finished this book, but I love it so much, and I'm so excited for the rest of the series. I hope she doesn't wait like another 4 years to write the next book like she did with Lair of Dreams though. The Diviners was really great, and I'm so glad that I read it this year. So those are all of the books that I read for my 2015 reading challenge. I would pick them all up and show them to you again, but they're all over my floor and I'm lazy. All in all, I'm really glad that I did this reading challenge. I feel like it played the role that it was meant to play. It made me pick up books that I wouldn't have picked up normally. So I diminished my TBR, I added a few more books to my TBR. I thought it went really well, and I'm really happy that I was able to actually accomplish it. I I'm hoping to do one for 2016 as well. I want to do the same kind of thing where it's not like ridiculous books that like I would never pick up normally, but it's just shifting around the levels on my TBR. If you have any suggestions for challenges that are similar to this, I would love to have them because I'm totally at a loss thinking of one for 2016. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new one. Bye!